Exciting.
All right. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hey, Maggie.
Hi. We are so thrilled to be together tonight. We're the Hall Simmons team. Nigel Hall, I'm Maggie Simmons, and we're based out of Brooklyn. And tonight we wanted to take some time to answer a question we get a lot, which is for referrals and information on the suburbs and surrounding areas for people who have decided to make a move out of the city. So tonight we have fantastic agents from both New Jersey and Westchester, and we will just dive in from there. So Bonnie and Susie, why don't you go first? Can you give us just a brief intro on who you are, what areas you serve, and how long you've been in the business?
Okay, so I'm Susie Adamson. We are in Essex County, New Jersey, which is many, many towns, and Bonnie will go over the specific towns that we serve. I've been in the business for 8 years, going on 9, and we've been with Compass for just over a couple of months, actually. And we're super excited to help all of your clients that are moving to New Jersey.
Yes. And I'm Bonnie Ramsey, and I've been in the business. This is my 7th year in the business. Susie and I teamed up about 5 years ago. We just started in January our 5th year together as partners. And we are a fine-tuned machine at this point. We formerly were with other brokerages, and we're very excited to now be with Compass. Susie's going to pull up a map here, and we can just point out which towns we serve, because one thing about New Jersey is there are a million small towns and they all flow into one another, and often you don't even know what town you're in. So it can be very overwhelming. We know if you're coming from Brooklyn or New York City to get reacquainted with how things work in New Jersey. In the middle of this map here, Maplewood and South Orange, that is where Susie and I reside, and we are hyper-local experts specifically in what we call SoMa, South Orange, Maplewood. But we do serve all of the towns that you see on this map. So as far north as Montclair, a lot of people coming from Brooklyn search. They say, well, we'll look in Montclair, we'll look in Maplewood, and then that usually ends up spreading out to those surrounding towns. So Montclair, Glen Ridge, Bloomfield, then West Orange, which is very large and spread out. Then you get to South Orange and Maplewood, which are a little more quaint with smaller downtowns. As you go west, you'll hit Short Hills and Milburn. And then we also serve Summit, which is not in Essex County, it's in Union County, but we do serve Summit. And then we also serve the areas of Union County that are closer to Maplewood. And all of these generally are within 20 to 27 miles from Manhattan.
Quick note is just to say that Short Hills and Milburn are together because it's actually all technically Milburn municipality. Short Hills is a subset of Milburn. And Bonnie and I both lived in Brooklyn at one point, so we understand the transition really well that most people are trying to make.
Yes.
That's great. And that map is hugely helpful. I just learned more about New Jersey than I've ever known. Corey, do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself and share where you work?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen so I can show you the map as well. So
and kudos to Corey. We stole the map from her. So.
Very helpful. And wow, that's a lot of towns.
It is a lot of towns. So I've been in real estate now for 9 years. I've been with Compass for 4 years. I'm the founding agent in the Rye area. And I have a team of 6 people that work with me, and we cover the east side of Westchester. So Westchester is similar to Manhattan. You've got a west side and an east side. So the whole Rivertown side is the west side of Westchester, and not that we don't cover it, but that's not our main focus. And we like to sell what we know very well. We really cover the east side, and we cover all the way up to Bedford, which is right over here. And we go all the way down to the Larchmont area. So let me make this map a little bit bigger so you can see. So Bedford's pretty big and it's very rural, and there's, beautiful big few acre, 3, 4, 5 acre lots, all the way down to Larchmont, where you get a little postage stamp of 0.15. But like similar to kind of what you guys are saying, 20 minutes into the city is definitely more of the 20 miles is definitely more of the Larchmont thing. And as you go a little bit north, you get more of that 30-mile, area. So you've got Larchmont and Mamaroneck. In Westchester, we sell very school district based. So you will hear people say the school district name, not necessarily the town or the PO, because that's how the values are associated. So you've got the popular areas are the Mamaroneck School District, which encompasses Larchmont. You've got New Rochelle and Scarsdale, White Plains, Rye, Port Chester, which is more urban. You've got Rye Brook. You've got Harrison and Purchase, which are the Harrison School District. You've got Armonk, Chappaqua, and Bedford. And that's kind of the main side that we cover for our clients.
That's great. Thank you.
Great.
Super
So,
helpful to me too. I have a quick follow-up question.
I'm
to
learning so
Corey.
much already.
I know, I'm learning too. Corey, if you look on that map from the point where you were talking about from the east side all the way to the farthest east, like what is that expanse? Like it's hard to get the proportion.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty big. You know, you'll go, I would say it's about almost 20 miles if you go as south as north as you're talking. So if you go from Larchmont all the way up to Bedford, it's about 20 miles. And then if you go another 25 miles, you're everybody talking about like Westport, Connecticut. That's another 25 miles up that direction. So Westchester probably spans about 20 miles from as south as we would sell up to where Bedford is probably as north as we would go.
Okay.
All right. So Bonnie and Susie, we'll start with you, and then we'll move on to you, Corey. When somebody is moving from Brooklyn, where do you start? What's going to happen when they first meet with you?
So Bonnie and I really pride ourselves in getting to know the clients really well and establishing a firm foundation for our knowledge of them and their knowledge of the process. So we understand that real estate purchasing in New Jersey is not like New York. Actually follows a different process. So we just want to make sure that they are not surprised and that they're equipped to make a really strong offer as soon as they find a good house. As we all know, it's a super hyper fast moving and competitive market. So we just want to make sure that we're all armed on both sides from the get-go. So we send them a buyer questionnaire that they fill out so that we have a most, really productive call when we do a Zoom with them, and Zooms have been actually really helpful for that. We used to sit down in our conference room and go through the whole thing, and then we get out on the road, and it would be like a 2-3 hour field trip, and that can take a lot of time, especially with like babies in tow. So it's nice to be able to break it up, do the Zoom call ahead of time, really late, get the foundation, and then we have them come out. We do what we call a safari tour now. We used to all get in one car. Now we're in separate cars with our phones, like kind of like walkie-talkies. Nigel, I think we did that even with your family. And, we just drive around and show different neighborhoods and go through like the different feels of the different parts of our towns and maybe even multiple towns. And and then we get a better sense. That we call that sort of the second part of the consultation. Then we'll look at some homes and then put me to, we often say, like, when you say you want a big backyard, what is big to me is not big to you. So we just try to make sure that we understand exactly where people are coming from. And then that way, after the first or second time out together, we have a really solid sense of what they're looking for. And then we won't have them come out from Brooklyn for a house that's not going to fit their criteria.
Right. And just to add to that, Susie and I do try to preview everything at the broker opens, which generally happens on a Thursday. And if we see something that checks off most of your boxes, then we're going to make an appointment. We're going to call you, schedule you to get out here. If there's something we need you to see right away, we are on it. We will call you. We'll say, listen, get out here tonight at 7:00. We'll show you this house. It's going to be really competitive. But like Susie said, that way, because we're previewing everything, you don't need to schlep your whole family out here to look at 3 homes that really just don't fit the bill for you.
Yeah, so and I'm sure Corey will speak to this too, but the Compass Collections is super helpful for that kind of communication, which we think is the best tool that we've seen. We set up buyers on this search tool, and then they can comment on specific properties, and then we can comment back. So if they say, we definitely want to see this on Saturday, and we say, no, it's actually terrible in person, or it smells like cats, don't come out. That's a big thing. We see a lot of houses that smell like cats, so it's true. You can't see that in the photos.
What about you, Corey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, very similar kind of process when I talk to a client for the first time, and Zoom has been great because we get to kind of get to know each other. I ask them where else they're looking, what are they looking for, where they grew up, so I can kind of find out what they're, a lot of times we'll get, especially in Westchester, because we're kind of mid of New York, we'll get one person grew up in Long Island and one person grew up in Rockland, or one person's from Florida. So we get a sense of what they like. Typically, I find in couples, they grow up in different kind of environments and are envisioning different things. So a lot of times people want what they grew up with, and a lot of times they want the opposite of what they grew up with. kind of figure that out together. And Westchester has so many different landscapes, from river views to mountains to walk to train, walk to town, to very neighborhoody cul-de-sac feels. So we kind of get a sense of that. And then we kind of, skew it down. Is school system important to them? What is their commute? Do they want to be, we could be anywhere from 25-minute train ride to an hour train ride. So we get a sense of kind of what the buyers are looking for. And then we give suggestive towns. And then at that point, we'll do town tours. And I don't like to do more than 2 town tours per time they come out, because I think they do tend to blend together and get confusing. So we'll do 2 tours, at a time. And at that point, we'll show them kind of the town and the train and where they would be having dinner and where they would send their kids to preschool or, elementary school. And we kind of point all that stuff out to them so they get a really good sense of what it is. In Westchester, we use lawyers for everything. So we kind of explain that process a little bit, the buyer process. Kind of what Susie said, it is a very, very competitive landscape. They need to be pre-approved. And, what we do is I'll preview the houses that the broker opens. A lot of time I'll video them and I'll send it to them in advance. I'll show them the house. I'll show them the street. I'll kind of give them a sense. I love my clients to try to see things twice before they make an offer. So I'm like, whether it's a video tour or come out once, and then a lot of times they'll come out again. They're young clients. They want to bring their parents. I want to give them that opportunity, but we're talking 3 or 4 days till any, good listing is going to kind of go to multiple offers. So I want them, when we make that initial call, we explain the process, we explain the nature. No one's trying to scare anybody that it's overly competitive. I think people fight for the right houses. And I think sometimes people need to lose the wrong houses to find the right house. And it's a process, and that's okay. And some of my clients are very back up against the wall because they have February deadlines to get into the preschools, and people, want their money or their leases are being re-signed. So we kind of just discuss that process. And here, because it's been such a, a seller-centric area, the preschools are getting filled up quickly. So some of my clients will put, deposits down, which is much less here. It's like $1,000 in Westchester versus $30,000 they want in the city in Brooklyn, just to kind of hold your spot. So we kind of go through that process and discuss it. And each town has its own vibe and feeling. And we really have such a good handle on what these towns are. And once we get to know the buyers, we marry it up very well.
Such invaluable information that you all have on your areas. Yeah, it just goes to show why having an agent who is really, like you said, Bonnie, hyper local and knows, it makes your search so much more efficient and productive. So can you guys take a moment to touch on what type of housing inventory you have? Are you looking at mostly single family? I know Corey, you mentioned some places you're going to get 20 acres, some places you're going to get a 1/4 acre. What type of inventory will people find in your towns? Is renting an option, or is it predominantly owning? Yeah.
So for us, I mean, in general, people are moving out here because they want a little patch of grass. They want a swing set, a small house, all the way up to a forever home, as we call it. So we do have a wide range of homes. Generally, I would say from the $400,000 range up to about $2 million. So if you go further north into Montclair, those homes can go well above the $2 million price point. But if you're looking in general,
as well as Short Hills.
Yes, and then in Short Hills as well. So the further west you go and the further north you go, there are larger lots, larger homes. In South Orange Maplewood, it caps out right around 2 million. So you can get a little more for your money here than you might in Montclair, and then also in Short Hills and Summit, you see those larger price points. We do, of course, have apartments, townhomes, condos, just not nearly as many as you find in Brooklyn. But there are some people who either can't find a home in time and they go ahead and rent for, you know, a year or short term. And then there are some people who do find condos. We work with renters. It's not a huge part of what we do, but we're happy to help people who just want to come and try it out for a year before they commit to buying a home. We do serve the condo market, and then, but I would say primarily our main focus are single family homes. And actually the average price point in the last year has gone up tremendously. It's now probably in the high 7s to low 8s. A couple years ago, you could get in pretty easily in the 5s and 6s, and that's unfortunately really changed in the last 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
For me, Westchester, you know, price points can go anywhere from $100,000 co-op to a $25 million mansion, kind of depending on what you're looking for. I think some towns have that, you know, I would say $1 million is probably more our average on the county, anywhere from like 900 to $1 million. Kind of staying on the east side of Westchester has a little bit more of the east side of Manhattan kind of feel, or, you know, of the certain areas of Brooklyn. So for us, I would say that we do everything. We do rentals, we do co-ops, condos, single family homes, for sure, depending on what people want. Our clients usually rent, not necessarily to try it out, but more because they can't find something to buy. The rents here are actually very high. People are surprised at how high the rentals are. You're renting typically from a homeowner, not necessarily from like a company or a corporation. So it's a little bit of a different feel, and they have to take care of all the taxes and the fees and stuff like that. So people rent not because they're trying to try it out or save money. They really do rent more so because they can't find anything to buy. And that's kind of what it is. We will, in this area, we'll have a lot more rentals in more of the urban areas. So maybe you'll find that in like a Larchmont, Mamaroneck, or you'll find rentals even in Greenwich, Connecticut. Those are rentals that a lot of people of my clients will go to, and then they'll start to look for the home search. But for us, the more north you go on the train line, the lower price per square foot you're going to pay. So every minute on the train, it's cheaper. And I think that is where it is in kind of all different areas, whether you're New Jersey, Long Island, Westchester. We have different feels on the west side and east side. You know, the west side is very much on the Hudson River, and you've got that. And then you've got the Sound Shore and the Long Island Sound, which is more the area that I cover, which would be the Larchmont and the Rye and, you know, those areas up. I find in Westchester that your price per square foot is higher if your taxes is lower also. So there are certain towns that have lower taxes and they actually have higher price per square foot. So, you know, at the end of the day, most of my clients that come from Brooklyn and Manhattan have a monthly number they want to hit. So each town, it could be different, right? It could be a different number depending on where they live, and we kind of situate them into that. But single family homes is most of what we do. We spend most of our time really relocating families from Brooklyn and Manhattan into the Westchester area and kind of educating them on the communities. So that is what a big portion of my team's business is.
Let's talk a little bit about timeline. You know, in Brooklyn, we have, you know, different timelines for the different products. You know, if you're closing on a co-op, you're going to have a different expectation of duration from condo to single family. What's it like in your respective areas?
I would say that the timeline for us is similar, regardless of what type of property you're buying, because it's really driven typically with the mortgage process. So it can go from 30 to 60 days in general. On average, it's 45 days because that's what the lender wants. But we are seeing, especially in spring market, we're going to see some situations where people have put their homes on earlier on in the market with the hopes that they will close and then rent back from the new owners until the end of the school year. So the earlier part of spring market, we'll start to see a lot more of what we call use and occupancy agreements. But the purchase process can take as short as, it can actually be as quick as 2 weeks if people have cash, or it can go, you know, more typically with the mortgage, they can still do a 30-day close these days. But we're seeing more typically 45 to 60 days.
And in our market, the multiple bids have been very challenging for anybody who's contingent on a mortgage. And we don't at all recommend anybody to remove any contingencies unless they're comfortable and speak to their lender. But in this market, obviously cash, people are looking to see what the seller wants. So the buyers are being very accommodating of the seller's time frame, which is not always the case, but in this market it is. So kind of what Susie was saying, if somebody wants a quick close, the cash guys can do it in 15 days. The mortgage guys will say 30. I really think they can do it in 45, to be honest. But we are doing a ton of rent backs because a lot of them want to play out this school year. So the rent backs benefit the buyer, honestly, because everyone's worried about the rates going up. So the buyers, they want to lock into a rate, they want to get there. And then, the sellers can then live in the house until they're ready to finish. And then it gives the sellers the cash to do whatever it is that they want to do, whether they're going to buy something. So it does kind of work in most cases. Early in this market being now, we'll see a lot more rent backs. As we get into April and stuff, will just be traditional, closings. But a lot of times as a listing agent, we'll put in the very beginning of the description, looking to close here. So if a lot of times a house needs, say, a renovation, for example, there's a house that came on the market recently that needed a ton of reno, but they didn't want to close until July. Well, that took a lot of people out of the market because that house needed 6 months worth of work and it was going to be too late for a lot of the buyers. So had it been a move-in ready and been a July 1st occupancy, they would have had a different, buyer pool. So it kind of depends on that, but certain banks are quicker and slower than others, as we know as well.
I would agree with you, Corey, that it's really driven by the seller preference at this point. And so what we urge all of our buyers is to be flexible as you can, to meet the needs of the seller, because really they're the ones in control in this market. So to get a home, you really do have to be bendable.
Yeah. And it seems like if they're renting, a lot of the clients that are renting from Brooklyn in the city, their landlords will allow them to do a month to month. It seems like that's a super flexible thing. Again, if they're closing and they're selling their house, there's different, time constraints. But the ones that are renting, they kind of feel like, oh, my landlord will let me go month to month for at least 6 months. So it gives them a little bit of flex.
Right.
So along those lines of, if someone has a property to sell here, I mean, overall, it sounds like the process moves much faster in both New Jersey and Westchester than it does in the city. And so knowing that a seller here is typically, it's a strong market for sellers, so they are likely to get an offer quickly, but the process can take up to 3 months for a close here. So how do you advise for clients who have to sell here, how should they time their search so that they're in a strong place to buy in your towns? Are sales contingencies viable? Are they viable if they're in no 3 head nods across so go ahead, talk about how you help your buyers who have sales in New York compete in your markets.
So we really encourage that anyone who's considering making a move to meet with us as soon as possible, because we really love to kind of talk through all of the options. Susie put together this amazing flow chart that's like, if it's a yes, go this way, no, this way. And it leads you through all of your options for buying and selling simultaneously, because it's incredibly stressful. And some people really want to line it up. Some people don't care. Some people only want to move once. Some people are willing to move in with parents for a while. So everybody is a little bit different. But we also speak to you regarding your lender and your financing. And we do have several lenders who are extremely creative and knowledgeable about some options that the buyer may not be aware of. So we always like to discuss that, the financing. But contingencies are really not really allowed here. No one really wants to accept a contingent offer. And so we're trying to creatively figure out a way for you to get a house without a contingency. So we'll help talk through all of those options, whether that means you do need to get under contract in Brooklyn and find a lender who will write you a non-contingent pre-approval so that you can get a house. Susie, do you want to add to that? Because there's a lot of things that
it's
can
not
happen.
impossible to get a house with a contingency, but it's very difficult. So if there are 10 offers on a house, obviously a contingent offer is not going to be even considered at all. It'll just like get off the table. But if there are 2 or 3 offers on a house, and that's not going to be very typical in the spring market, but should there be a situation where the buyers are willing to do a lot of work, and so they don't need a shiny, move-in ready house that everyone's going for. It is possible that we can compensate for the risk that the contingency is presenting for the sellers. We can compensate for it in making everything else stronger. Maybe they have to offer a little bit more. Maybe they have to be more flexible. So again, it's not impossible, but it is highly improbable that you will get a contingent offer accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also want to add that Compass has a bridge loan program. So again, just to speak to the financing, we can talk through all of those options where if you have some equity in your home in Brooklyn that you are selling, we can help get you a bridge loan, which can bridge the gap and help you put a down payment and maybe close on a home in New Jersey, while you're waiting for the co-op board stuff to go through, and maybe there's an overlap of a couple of months. But the bridge program, some bridge programs are only for 6 months, but Compass allows you to hold your bridge loan for up to 5 years. So it really is a great program, and it's very flexible. So we're happy to talk through those options as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And very similar here as well. We do not do contingent offers even in a seller's market. I mean, a buyer's market, we have not done contingent offers in Westchester. Bridge loans are amazing. And what Compass offers is great. Getting your lender to give you a non-contingent pre-approval is kind of what you need. I always say if they are doing the co-op process, to wait until it's been approved before they actually make an offer on something. But it doesn't mean we can't educate them on the market and let them see things. It doesn't mean that they should stay in Brooklyn and wait until that's done. Let's get out there. Let's know the neighborhoods. Let's get to know the streets. Let's know the inventory. So when they are in a position to make an offer, they can pounce on it and they can be a competitive offer. In this market, yes, if you are contingent on a mortgage, not a home sale, but if you're contingent on a mortgage, you're going to pay a little bit more. But some sellers are motivated by money and some sellers are motivated by comfort. So, we try to get to know what the seller wants before we make an offer so that we can make a creative offer. If they need to be in their house for time, maybe we can work on that. So we do what we can to kind of know what the seller wants so the buyer can have a great offer. Some sellers just want to know the buyers are going to love the house. So every situation is different. And, we have a really great collaborative experience with all the different agents here, whether they're Compass agents or non-Compass agents. And we do very well at working with other agents. That's super important for us because these markets, as big as they may seem on our map, are really small. There's only a few top agents that kind of do the business in this area, and we know each other very well. So once we kind of know what everybody wants, we talk to our buyer and we create what we think will be the best package for that seller. And hopefully in a competitive offer, we win the bid. Yeah. And moving fast is important. Getting your lawyer retained in advance is really important. Having your inspector knowing that you can kind of jump on a dime and get your home inspected. A lot of contingencies our buyers will remove. The inspection contingency is not something that we have removed at this point. We may inspect for information only, but between a home inspection, an oil tank inspection, a septic inspection, a well, there's a lot of different things that kind of happen within this process. And it's important to make sure that you're buying a house that has been well vetted out and that you're comfortable with. So even though the market moves very fast, we never want our clients to feel like they don't have a little bit of control and they can't make sure that they're very comfortable with what they're buying.
Corey, I just wanted to touch on one thing that you mentioned that buyers in the city don't really have to think about, and that's septic and well. Could you talk a little bit more about what to look for when you're
Absolutely. So the more north you go, the more inspections you'll have. So just kind of assume that in your thought process. If you're in a Larchmont, you're probably just doing a home inspection. The more north you go, you'll have areas that don't have gas. So you'll have to do an oil tank inspection if it's underground. And that would be an additional about $350. Oil tank inspections are a big deal. They ruin a lot of deals, to be honest, if they fail. Once an oil tank inspection fails, the seller is actually responsible. They have what they call a spill code. They're responsible for fixing that failed inspection. Whether they choose to do that and continue with your buyer or move on is up to them, but they do actually have to fix it. And whether that's pulling it from the ground or tightening the fittings that are in the oil tank or the other myriad of things that can kind of go on, it is up to them to kind of take care of that. As far as the oil tank goes, septic, most homes, south of, I would say, the Rye area are on sewer, which is municipal sewer. As you go a little bit more north, you get septic. Septic is a system that you control your own waste and that you have to do an inspection to make sure it works well. And I would say about every 2 years, you just have to flush out your septic system. So it's not a huge issue. It's not a problem, but it's something that definitely needs to be inspected. And then there's well. Well is actually inspected by the seller 10 days prior to when you close, but you're in charge of your own water versus being on municipal water. So having a trusted local agent that kind of knows these things versus just Googling them and it's kind of like Googling when you have a sore throat and it could be a million different things. Like that here too. Don't Google it. Just talk to your agent and trust that they know what they're talking about, because they do. And we have well vetted out resources for people to inspect or to check or to fix all of these things. So that's another important thing here. If things need work, there's local contractors. It's very important here to work with people that are local so they know the town codes and the ordinances. So everything is done the right way.
I think it's an important point that you make, that people work with an agent who actually know what they're talking about. And I think it's easy coming from the city to just Google somebody or find a name of somebody, and you may end up with a Hoboken or Jersey City agent who's willing to drive out to the western suburbs of New Jersey, where they might have septic tanks and wells and things like that. And they can't really advise you on certain vendors to use and inspectors. And so it's important to choose a good agent. It really is important. So that's part of the reason we're doing this call, is that we would love to help any Brooklyn buyer or New York City buyer who is looking in New Jersey. And Susie and I are very good about referring people out if we are not experts in the area you're looking in. It's really vital that we have strong relationships, one with our colleagues who are selling homes, because it really does matter which agent is presenting the deal. And then along with getting you to the closing table through the inspections and making sure you don't forget to do an oil tank inspection or what have you. So it really is a good point to make, that it does matter who your agent is.
This is very important on that. They really want you to kind of sell what you know, and they really want you to refer out what you don't. And I think we have so many great agents in every big market, and actually in all markets. So if we don't know a certain area, we have so many agents that do know that area. And I agree, you only sell what you know and what you're an expert in, and that's what benefits your buyer.
Definitely.
I just want to mention, since you talked about oil tanks, Bonnie and I have had way more than our share of oil tank issues in the past few years. And in our area, we absolutely would not advise a client to buy a home with an underground oil tank, even if it's operational and not failing. So, it definitely is different area by area. And, we have all the resources. Like Corey said, you got to have an agent actually who is deep enough into the market that they have trusted vendors to call on. And in this market right now, when all of the vendors are so busy doing so much work, all the contractors are incredibly busy, just getting them to return a phone call is like pulling teeth. You have to work with agents who have connections, who matters. And, we always say, like, when we call a chimney inspector, because they're so crazy right now, especially in the winter, they're so busy just doing work. When we call our vendors, they come running because we give them enough business and they trust us and they like us and we're nice to them. So it's important who you work with.
Is because it helps with the pace of the deal. And that's kind of ultimately the seller wants, somebody that's going to kind of move quickly and be able to, get the deal to fruition and get into contract and sell. So having those connections really could win or lose a deal for a buyer.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, oil tanks make looking for parking sound like a breeze. So I don't know. There's a few benefits to Brooklyn, Nigel.
Oil tank is a one-time thing, though. Parking is every day.
Parking is every day. Parking
does not compare.
Is propane a thing up there, or is it just mainly oil? Is there propane?
It is.
tank?
When you're on oil and you want your cooking to be like a gas-fired cooking, then you'll do it on propane. Also, if you have a pool, if you're on oil and you have a pool, you want the propane to warm the pool. So a lot of times propane tends to be expensive, so you'll only have propane if you have oil and it's an additional supplement. If a street has gas, the buyers will go for gas. There's been a gas moratorium in Westchester now for over 2 years. So that's kind of been our issue. So we've seen a lot of people do these like hybrid, like we're propane right now, but once the gas moratorium gets lifted, we're going to kind of convert back over. So that's what, new construction, people who have current properties that maybe need more gas and that Westchester's not allowing more gas at this time, they'll kind of set it up like that so that once the moratorium's up, we can get more gas in the area.
Interesting.
So interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think there's one more big piece to the puzzle that everybody considers when buying, and that's commute. What's commute like to Jersey and Westchester?
And what service lines do you use?
So in New Jersey, Susie and I primarily service the Midtown Direct train line. And that generally, if you get an express train from South Orange, for example, that can be 30 minutes door to door to Penn Station. So other towns, you might access the bus and you could take a bus into Newark and then get on a different train, or you can take a bus straight into Port Authority. Some people do drive to some train stations that are further away because they have more parking, and they'll do like a park and ride situation. But in general, I would say anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half, depending on how well the train is running and where you park. A lot of the towns we serve do have jitneys that are like little school buses that go around the neighborhoods, pick you up during commuter hours and take you to the train station, so you don't have to worry about parking. And then you're looking at the time it takes you to get to Penn Station, and then again, the time it takes you to get to your office. So all in all, I would factor in a solid hour, probably to an hour and a half to get door to door to your office.
For us, we're trained, we're the Metro North. So we have a bunch of different lines, the New Haven line, the Hudson line, the Harlem line. I would say the closest train is the quickest train is about 24 minutes. And probably the longest train that I service would be an actual, 50-minute train ride. Getting to the train could be anywhere from 2 minutes to 15 minutes, depending on where you live. So your commute can anywhere be from 40 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes door to door from your house. We are, due to COVID, we are not back on those express times, but usually in the normal train times, you'll get, 3, 4, 5 trains per hour. So maybe some trains like big hubs like White Plains will be every 3 minutes. And then maybe like a typical ride train will be every 20 minutes and you'll get 3 an hour. And they'll be express during the morning and afternoon commute times. The first train out, my husband actually goes on the first train out, which is a 4:54 train a.m.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
So that's usually
That
the first train,
early.
first express train out. And then they kind of go from there. But it's really nice. The train by us, it's a social hour. You kind of chat with your neighbors. You sit, in train cars. Everybody says go in train car 3, and they talk. And there's some people that want to watch their Netflix and not listen to anybody, and there's other ones where they'll chit chat with the husbands, the wives, combinations, whatever it is. So it's actually a social hour for some people. Some people get work done, some socialize. Either way, it seems to be a nice wind down. So when you're ready to get home, you're kind of wound down and you're ready to kind of tackle your family and everything that comes walking in the door.
Or have them tackle you.
Exactly.
Yeah, one thing my husband thought was funny when we moved out here is you could get a train beer. So
Yeah.
at Penn Station, they'll fill up a beer with a straw, which seems so gross to me, but you can just have your beer on the way home. You can
Happy
also
hour.
get work done. It's happy hour, yeah. And generally you get a seat on the train. So it's a little different than commuting via subway, because you can get your train beer, take a seat, get some work done, or talk to your friends or whatever. So it's a little more chill than a subway commute.
And it's a great way to meet people. Before I was in real estate, I was in ad sales for 15 years and I commuted into Midtown. And I met a lot of my friends that we're friends with now on the train. So it really can pose to be a way to get to know people also. Instead of meeting somebody for a drink, you'll meet them in the train. And a lot of our train stations have restaurants once you get off the train. So whether you're going to meet there for dinner or meet your family or have a drink, or maybe just pick a to-go up and kind of go back to your house, a lot of the train stations here have restaurants that are in the station that have really great food.
It sounds like not only can you have great food and beer, but you could also possibly shorten your commute if you're in a town that's 20 minutes away.
Yeah, as opposed to
Yeah.
a Brooklyn commute. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we went through our list of questions, so thank you all. This was hugely informative. I know I learned a lot and feel better equipped to prepare and advise our clients, mainly by saying, call Bonnie, Susie, and Corey. But yeah, is there anything else you'd like to mention before we wrap this up?
I'll just echo what Bonnie was saying, that if we don't serve the part of New Jersey that you're looking at, we absolutely will find you the right Compass agent wherever you are. We are all over New Jersey now. So just be assured that if you contact us about any part of New Jersey, we'll be able to help you one way or the other.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we have started spring market basically here. I know it's only January, but you know, the buyer, here we are. The buyers are queued up. We are still waiting for inventory, but if you have any inkling of considering a move this spring, this summer, now is the time. I'm sure it's the same for Westchester, but now is the time to reach out, get your ducks in a row. We're happy to refer you to lenders and just get those conversations going. Happy to give you tours, show you some homes, just so that when you find the house and when you are ready to go. It is very important that you have all your ducks in a row so that you can compete with the masses. Yeah. So we're always happy to answer questions.
I think Corey will echo this as well, but it's not going to get easier. So if we hear from buyers all the time, is the market going to slow down? Is it going to shift anytime soon? No. So, I mean, we don't have a crystal ball, but there's no indication that we're going to shift suddenly into a buyer's market anytime soon. So if you want to move in the next 5 years, please start sooner rather than later.
Especially while the rates are low.
Yes.
It makes
Were you going to add something, Corey?
Half a point. Yeah, half a point on a mortgage, makes a really big difference if somebody's loaning, borrowing 80%. So that's why the market is so busy right now, why there's so many buyers, because they recognize that. And a lot of people say, well, I want to wait out the market. I want to wait a year or two. Well, if the rates go to 3.75 and the prices here are maybe 15% higher on a monthly basis, it's still going to be cheaper to buy now and maybe pay another 30 or 40,000 more than the asking price for a house than to wait a few years or to rent and kind of waste your money renting for 3 years when you come back into the market. So don't be intimidated that you feel like you're paying more than the asking price. A lot of the strategies of the selling agents here is to price it low to create a demand. So I always say, ask your agent how it's priced. Don't look at the number and get stuck on that. If it's a $900,000 price tag and it really is a 1-1 house, don't get stuck on bidding 925. If it's a 1-1 and that's what the comps support, bid what you think it needs to be to kind of get the house. So it's important to kind of have those conversations. And, it's great to look on the collections or on Zillow where everybody's looking, but the agents kind of know the market and things look different. That sold in 2021. My clients would say, oh, but this price was this. I'm like, but that's on the highway. And that one has, a cemetery in the background and it has that. So it's important to know if something looks like it was underpriced, it's underpriced for a reason. And it's important to have those conversations.
Yep.
Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Nigel and Maggie, for giving us the opportunity to talk about our areas. And we just would appreciate any and all referrals. And we love bouncing ideas and talking shop with you guys. It's always fun.
And next time we get to ask the questions about Brooklyn, right?
We're ready. We're ready.
Always
well, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Right. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
All right. Thank you.